Today's going to be more transaxle fun. I have most of these parts kind of organized by the way I took them off. Each of the corresponding shafts, whether it's the main shaft or the pinion shaft. And then this box has some just generic tools, kind of left over from my 741 rebuild. Sorry for the bad camera work here. I went to a different workshop to push the remaining bearings and gears off the shafts. So now it's fully stripped down, ready to clean and reassemble with new bearings. And if you're not fully up to speed on this project, this is a transmission I took out of my 911 hot rod. It was popping out of third gear, and upon disassembly, I found that it had some broken teeth on the main shaft, and also the gear housing, which is made of magnesium, was worn out. The bearing bores were enlarged to the point where it wasn't holding the races correctly. So I've taken that housing out of commission. It's sent off to be remanufactured by a specialist, and I'm moving all the internals to another housing that I'm rebuilding as sort of a stock transmission. That's the one I'm working on now. That'll get me at least a year down the road before I really build an extra strong transmission for a high-powered 3.2. Every transmission needs like some new part, and I am replacing the dog teeth and synchros on second and third gear. Actually synchros on all the gears, but second and third dog teeth. And in a previous video, I showed you guys how I removed the dog teeth. It was not pretty, but I don't have the tools, and I don't feel like buying the tools. I think they're like, you need two separate tools that clamp on to the little ring here, and that allows you to extract them. But because these are going in the trash anyways, I made my own tool, which is basically just a hole cut in a plate, and I used the plasma cutter, cut that out. And I had welded the dog teeth to the plate, and I just pulled it out. Third gear is a little bit easier in that the actual teeth are bigger diameter than the gear itself. So you don't even have to weld anything. You can just push these off. It's a little bit easier, but there is a little bit different plate, a little bit different size hole. So basically, you know, this goes in there and we can just push it off. So I'm gonna go ahead and push that off, and we'll get back to installing new stuff. This didn't damage the dog teeth at all, and I made sure I was pushing on just the gear housing there. But this just needs to get cleaned up, and then we'll put the new one on. And then one of the big decisions to make is, what do you replace and what do you keep? And I think the decision is different if you're a shop and you have to warranty this stuff. Basically, I've read the Zimmerman tutorial. You know, it's a great tutorial. He basically says replace everything, and I totally get it. If I'm a shop and I have a reputation and a warranty to uphold, then by all means, replace everything. I am doing this for myself, and I'm only replacing what I think is necessary. Also, if you compare notes with some of the 356 guys, which is a similar design transmission, they're a lot more inclined to reuse stuff, basically because parts availability is not as good. So, or they're very, very expensive with get new old stock. So I'm sort of somewhere in between. This particular piece wasn't that bad, but what I can do for you guys is I can measure the height of these teeth, and the teeth get rounded off. So if I take a measurement of the height of the dog teeth and compare them to the new one, that should give you a little idea. This is in inches, 207, and a brand new tooth or dog teeth is 213. So you're looking at 6/1000ths of an inch is not that much. But what is important is kind of the shape of the teeth, because you want it to, as it comes into that slider, the slider ring has matching teeth to it. You want them to not conflict. You want them to just rotate slightly and then go together. That's how you shift gears. If the teeth aren't sharp, then you have a harder time getting it to go between gears, because if the 2 points line up perfectly, then there's a chance where you're just gonna, it's called balking, and they're just gonna get stuck. I didn't have to replace this one, but it's just good measure to replace things that look slightly worn. And other stuff, like some of the other gears, first, fourth, and fifth, the teeth looked almost as good as new. So there's no point in replacing them, if you ask me. The synchronizing rings, that is more of a wear item. They're designed to wear. They have a coating on them. Any kind of area that is shiny or broken through the coating, I'm just replacing it. And these are not the actual Porsche ones. These are from Roush and Spiegel. They are a US-based company. I think they're in Utah or something. But they make, I think, good parts. I'm also using their synchro rings because they're sort of mated in the same shape. They fit inside these teeth, and I think they just fit well. So it kind of makes sense to stay within brand on that. That's what I'm doing. And then in terms of bearings, bearings are a little bit easier to inspect. You just basically want to look for, you know, dull wear patterns or pitting or heat damage in the bearings, or if there's any kind of cracks, if any of the races or the, what's it called, the cage is broken, then that's a good one to replace. I'm not replacing all the bearings. That's my philosophy. Here's that gear. It's out of the ultrasonic cleaner. It's still a little bit wet, but it's cleaned all that debris that's underneath the dog teeth. And so now I can go ahead and put the new one on. I'm just gonna WD-40 this, and that's it. Push it together, make sure it sits flush. When you push it, the ring has to be flush with this surface of the gear. And then these they're splined, and it's a pretty coarse spline, but when you put these pieces together, you can feel, just ever so slightly, you can feel those splines locked together. And that's when you know it's okay to push it down. You know, line it up the best I can until it feels like it's there. Pick a good spot where it feels like it wants to go on. And then just don't touch it, push down. It's on there. If you watch my 356 trans videos, you'll know I did a special procedure where I was using feeler gauges or spacers, and I was dropping it down at like millimeters at the most at a time. And this time I just went for it. Basically, the presses, no press is actually perfect. It's gonna give a slight bias to one side. So what I was doing is I was rotating it in the press multiple times, and I was just using my eyes. I was just watching how planar the two pieces were coming together. And if I saw that it wasn't going down straight, I would rotate it. So I was rotating it 90, 180, kind of back and forth. Once it started going down, it was about halfway on, it basically just, some of the energy stored in the press just got it to go all the way down. And without really squeezing hard on it, it's fully seated. So if you look at the distance between the gear and the dog tooth or dog teeth ring, it's fully tightened down. You can't put anything underneath there, piece of paper, nothing. It's nice and flat and planar. I also was afraid that it might have cracked the ring when it made that snapping motion, but it didn't. It just pushed it all the way down. There's no cracks, nothing bent. This is ready to go. I'm gonna install the synchro ring, energizer bands, and blocks, and then the snap ring. This thing will be ready to go back onto the main shaft. Inside this bag here is a piece of tape, 6342. That's for this gear here, 6342. So I kept everything together as it was taken apart. And these are the original parts. Everything has been cleaned. Notice there's not a lot of wear marks on this energizer band. This thing is pretty nice. It looks almost brand new. Same thing with this energizer block. There's a little shiny spot here on the end, but that's okay. As long as there's no pitting or any material missing, these are okay to reuse. I mean, that's my opinion, of course. Also, you can see how there's a few witness lines here. That's where the inside of the synchro, pushes up against there. So it's normal to see some lines on there, but you can't feel anything with your finger, and that's what I'm after. I'm after, good parts that can be reused, and these I think are good parts. So the way this goes back together is this goes here. It only goes together really one way. On this one, it's symmetrical, and then this part is on that side. Sometimes you can look at the parts and see how it wore, and that's how you know how to put it back the same way. But on this one, it's hard to tell. I'm just going to put the arrow up. These are the correct size, similar size. The difference is this has got a lot of shininess to it. This is very worn. The aftermarket ones from Roush and Spiegel are slightly different. They don't have the same dark coating. It's like a lighter coating, but it's a very rough surface. It feels like 180 grit sandpaper, and they're supposed to wear similarly. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in, and then there's a procedure for measuring the outer diameter once it's installed. These are pre-tensioned a little bit, so when you squeeze it, it fits just like that. So it's kind of locked itself in place, and then this snap ring holds it all together. So everything's loose, not binding. It's holding itself down. Now I just need to go get the pliers, wipe this off with a towel, and then bind it up. And this gear will be, I think, done, assuming it checks out okay with the measurements. There is an opening here in the dog tooth, and that's where I like to start with my snap rings. It's just a little bit easier to get it going there. Start there. You're just working it around as you open it up a little bit. And the last little bit is always a little bit of a challenge. I just happen to have these, so I'm just going to tap it down. And that's in. Once it's in, I don't like to have this opening with that opening, so I'm just going to take the pliers and I'm going to rotate it around. That should be good. And for this, the range is pretty big, and it's in millimeters, so I'm going to go ahead and put my calipers into millimeter mode. Yeah, the target dimension is 76.3 plus minus 0.18, so it's 76.12 to 76.48, 2.997, 3.011 inches. I was getting some funny numbers with my calipers, so I'm now switching to the micrometer. So the micrometer has a much flatter surface, so you're not measuring on top of a lumpy thing. This is just going to be better, I think. Almost out of range here, that's the other problem. 3.05, which is within that range. It's just a little tricky. I might go get a different caliper. I have a 3 to 4, I think. What happens is this is running into the actual teeth, so I'm not getting a great measurement with this either, but it is better. I think this is the better tool to use here. This is a 3 to 4 inch, and this is a gauge to make sure it's working correctly. So it's right there on 0. Put that back in the box. This is the way to do it here. Much better. I'm getting 3.01, which is right at the maximum limit. Here I'm getting 3.001, which is sort of right in the middle. Depending where you measure relative to that cutout, you do get slightly different numbers, but no matter what I do, it's within that big range. The nice thing about this tool here is it goes in between there. See how it can go in between? And that centers the measurement point right where you need to be. That's right where you want to measure it, right there. So this gear is ready to go back onto the main shaft. So I'm going to do that with same thing with first, second, third, and fourth. Here's something for you guys that kind of like the numbers. I've taken the old dog teeth and the old synchro ring and I've just put them together. It tends to pop out on its own without the retainer clip in there. But I just got these, little clamps on there. I'm going to measure the old parts just so you can kind of compare with the new parts. And right away, this one's less than 3. 2.9872, which is less than 2.997 by almost 20 thousandths of an inch. So this is one of the reasons why it was popping out of gear. This is well out of spec. So these are trash. I finished getting all my gears assembled and the synchros, everything's staged now, ready for assembly onto the main shaft. But I've taken my extra countertop table here and I want to make sure that the main shaft is okay because this is a used part. I don't have any experience with it other than it came as a disassembled transmission. So the prudent thing to do would be to measure it for run out, make sure it's not bent. There's 3 points that it's supported and this is actually just a seal out here, but these are where the bearings support it. You just want to make sure it doesn't wobble when you turn it. So you would be able to see it if it was really bent, but we'll put a dial indicator on there. So this indicator is just sitting on there, and if you turn this, you can zero this if you want to. So it does move. See the needle's moving about, I don't know, I think it's less than 1/1000th of an inch. This is in thousandths of an inch. That's about 1/2 of it out. I think this is how it is in the book. Try not to touch that end. Same thing, about 1/1000th run out. I'm going to double check the book, but I think that's reasonable. Yeah, I just checked the book, says 4/1000ths max, but measured out here. I don't think it's going to make a difference either. It's about 3/1000ths. About 3/1000ths from extreme end to one end. So I think this is good to go. Let's assemble it. You can see like on this one, you can see how there's wear marks where it contacts the teeth. So this gear goes this way. This is a thrust washer, it goes in between. So put that on now. And just want to feel around for the best possible fit. Should go over those splines. There we go. Now see how that butts right up against those teeth? This shaft has the good teeth on it, so. And this has the bearings which have been cleaned. The cage is all nice there, so we're gonna just put it all together as one. Same thing, slips right over, nice and easy. This spider device. This one's purely symmetrical. It could go either way. But based on the wear marks, I think it goes this way. Also, this was inspected for wear too. You want to look right here and see if there's any pitting or large divots in it with your finger. I can't feel anything on this, so we're going to reuse this piece as is. Oh, I just got my hand stuck in there. There we go. Now the slider, you know, this can go on either way as well. One of these has more wear than the other. I actually picked this out of that other transmission box. So I'm going to, because this is third gear, I'm going to put it this way. So the sharper teeth are pointing to third gear. I don't think it's badly worn, but I am going to pick a direction on that one. Same thing, these needle bearings are very well sorted out, cleaned. Spins really nice. So let's go ahead and drop that on. Definitely the synchro rings go down towards the slider. That's normal. And I'm going to pull this off for a second. This sleeve might need a little help going on. That's on. Make sure the bearing's in there. No missing needles or anything like that. That goes that way. And then next we have this thrust washer. And this thrust washer does have a direction. In this case, the cone points up. That's so that the next bearing is going to make contact in the right place. This is the bearing retainer. Like I said, I'm going to use the stock one for that. And this is a bearing that I'm going to reuse. This is what they call, I think it's the 4-point bearing. It's nice and shiny inside, no real wear to the races or anything like that. So I'm willing to use this one again. And it's going to get pushed on there. Now this could take some force to get on there. So I know it goes in this direction. This is the retainer, holds it like that. We don't want to hammer too much on this. Better to use a press here. Yeah, I can't get that to go down anymore. And I think instead of hammering on it, I do think a press is better. So those are some light taps. Didn't cause any damage to the bearing, but we don't want to damage the bearings, of course. And then the last one that goes on is this one. And then the nut secures everything together. And then I have some tools left over from the 356 rebuild. That looks like this tool is going to be able to be reused again. That's going to let me just push all this down. Just about run out of length on that. So, plus the diameter of this is not going over the threads. So I'm going to have to rework this tool just a little bit, but we got it almost all the way down. I got close on that one. Didn't quite get the bearings pushed all the way on at the press. I kind of ran out of length on that, like I said, and I was really not doing it the way I should do it, which is upside down. I really should, you know, have this part go through the press and then use a much shorter bushing that'll just clear those threads. You know, this is the nut that goes on there. I need something that just clears those threads, but it actually pushes on the inner race there on the bearing. And then I could use something like this, you know, this kind of contraption so that it pushes like that. And you probably could push on it like that too, but I just don't want to damage the bearings. I want to make sure there's a little buffer there so you're not pushing on that outer race. But we'll get it together. It's really, really super close. I'm more happy that I got all the gear train restored and it's in spec and the dog teeth are great. The synchros are great. Didn't forget any parts. So we're on our way. The other thing I realized is I was also going to put together the pinion shaft. Let me show you that. This pinion shaft, I was also going to put it back together. I mean, I have a new bearing here, the big pinion bearing. This is new, I got it ready to go. But what I realized is that when I changed the main shaft to the one that didn't have the broken teeth on it, it also requires you to change first gear. The two are mated, they're matched together. They have serial numbers on them and they should stay together. So when I replace the main shaft, I'm also replacing first gear. The gear itself is in good condition, but I forgot to inspect the dog teeth on this one. It's not bad, but my other first gear had better dog teeth on it. And my method of pulling this apart is not great. So I'm gonna end up damaging the dog teeth when I take it off. So I'm gonna have to get new dog teeth for this first gear. I'm not gonna go through the motions of updating the dog teeth and synchros to be the non-symmetrical type. I'm gonna do that on my longer term transmission, which is like, I'm calling it the hot rod transmission. I'll do that on that transmission. So there's a few other things on my list, like this nut needs to be replaced. It's got a tab on there that gets peened over. So it's better to get a new one and re-peen it so it doesn't come loose again. So that's where I'm at today. We got some progress done. We're now putting things together. I'm starting to get a little bit more confident with working with these gears and getting things assembled. I think it's gonna run great. So thanks again for your encouragement. Thanks for watching this gear episode. There's gonna probably be at least 2 more. Setting up the differential is gonna be the big one. So thanks for watching and we'll see you next weekend. Cheers.